Hey everyone, in this video, we'll go over the basics of Django Signals. We will explore 4 different signals in this video: the pre-save, the post-save, the pre-delete, and the post-delete signals. And to do this, we will write just a few simple functions that print strings to the console first to understand when it's getting called and how it's working. And then we'll use these signals to build 2 different examples. The first being, we want to go ahead and create a profile object whenever we create a user. So this is a very simple profile. We're just going to connect the user object right here in the field user, and we'll also take their first name, which we're going to get from our form, and we're going to save it here in the first name field. And for the second example, we're going to go ahead and create an audit. So whenever they delete a user, we're going to create this audit object to keep track of what user was deleted and what date it was deleted at. So these are just 2 very simple examples, hopefully to understand this and to create a more real-world project example to explain it. There are a lot more signals. If you go to their documentation, you can go ahead, you can see that they have all sorts of signals here: pre-init, post-init, the saves, deletes, M2, mchange, class prepared, and we're not going to go over all of these. They'll work very similarly. They're just called at different times during your program, and so you can read up on here and figure out when you want to use these different ones and the arguments they have, but it works the same as what we're going to use here to go over with. Okay, now let's go ahead and get started with this. So I have this project open right now, and I already have it set up. So I already have my models created. I've already migrated my changes. I've already created an admin user, super user, so I can log into the admin panel if I get to that. I can log into the admin panel already, and I created a form already. Now this form is not very pretty, and I didn't really spend any time doing that because it's not really important for this video. We're just going over signals and how they work, so we're not going to worry about that for now. But I created a form and use that form inside of these views here for the register, logout, and delete views, as well as the dashboard page you'll see here in a little bit. And I created the templates here as well. This starting code will be available on GitHub. You'll find the starting code link in the description below. So if you want to start right where I'm at and have this code, it'll be available there for you. Okay, now to get started, I'm going to put all of the signal code within the models.py. Typically, you probably want to create a separate signals.py file and put it in there. And for this project, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to put it all in here to keep it as simple as possible. So first things first, a signal is just a function that gets called when a certain action happens on a model object. So for example, we'll create a pre-save signal function. So right below my profile, I'm going to create a pre-save profile function. And so to do this, first we'll create a typical function. So we'll do a def user pre-created handler. And this handler will take in 2 different arguments. It'll be star args and star quargs. And from here, we're going to go ahead and just print a string. So we'll do a print. It'll say user will be created. Now this will be created because this is the pre-save, I should say, signal. And now there has to be a way to call this function to be able to actually run this when right before a user is saved. And so what we can do is we can go below this and we can type pre_save, and I will import that here in a second, .connect. And then from here we pass in our function. In this case, it's user pre-created handler. And then we need to go ahead and pass in a sender. And so do sender equals user. So in this case, I have user imported here at the top, and we're passing in as a sender here. And so what this is going to do is going to look on this user object, and whenever we try to say something, right before we save that, it will run this pre-save signal, which will run our function we passed in right here. And so all we need here is a sender, and that will run whatever function we have whenever something happens on this object that's passed in here. Now, first things first, I go to import that. So I'll do from django.db signals import pre_save. And now this should work just as it is. So let's go ahead now and test this out and see what happens. I save that, come up here to my terminal, make sure everything's running. It is. Let's go back to our browser here, refresh the page, and I'm going to go ahead and create a user. So I'll create a test3 user, test, give it a password. and a first name. We'll just say test. We'll go ahead and hit sign up. And now it's logged in as test3. If I jump into my terminal here, you'll see it ran user will be created, but you'll see here it ran this before it saved the user. I'm going to go now and delete this user just to get rid of it for now. But that is working correctly. Now there is another way to do this though. If I go back to the code, instead of running this connect function, what we could do, and actually this should probably be outside of the object. Let's go ahead and put this out one. But anyway, this right here, we don't need this line. We can do something else instead, which I think looks a little better and is a little easier. And I personally prefer to do it this way. We can do a from Django dot dispatch import receiver. And we're importing this receiver decorator. And to use a decorator in Python, you put the @ symbol and you type in the decorator name. And now I can pass some arguments into this decorator. And what we'll need to pass in here is we pass in the signal, which in this case is pre-save, and we need to pass in a sender here as well. So sender equals user. So this is doing the exact same thing, but since we're putting a decorator on top of this function right here, we can just pass in the signal and the sender, and this will go ahead and do this logic whenever the pre-save signal is called on this sender user, or on this user object. And so we can do that instead of writing this line, which I think looks a little better. I mean, either one works. We can go ahead and save this and it will work the same. So if I were now to jump back into the code or into the browser, okay, and now we check our console here again, and it still ran again like it did last time. So this is still working just fine. Now let's go ahead and move on to our next signal, which is the post save. And just like the name suggests, this runs right after an object is saved. And you'll notice some difference about this post save signal. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, pre-save the start, and we'll go ahead and make some changes to this to make it a post save. So once again, the receiver, we can change the pre here to post and keep the sender as user because we want to check when a user has been saved, right after a user has been saved. We can change this user pre-created to user post-created handler. And this will be has been created. And this alone should run just fine, just like that. And once again, we could go ahead and I'll just copy this down for reference, but we could also go ahead and change this as well to post and this here to post. So we could call postsave.connect, pass in our function, and then pass in the sender like we did previously, or we can use this decorator. Either one works. I'm going to keep the decorator for now because I like how that looks better. But anyway, we can go ahead and save that. We change this to match our post save. We'll go ahead now and run this again. So I'll go ahead and delete this user. And now you'll see here, you can see the process of how this works. We have the user that will be created, and then it runs that user has been created. So the pre happens first because it's before it's saved, and the post happens after it's been saved. Now there's a few more things we can do here with the post save. So I open up the documentation and go to the post save documentation here, and this will be in the description as well if you want to see that. But we can look at the arguments sent with this signal right here. They have a sender, which we already talked about, is the model class for the object that we want to check when it's being saved. We have the instance, which in this case, the instance is the object that's actually being saved. So it's that new user object that we're saving in the database. Next, we have a created Boolean, and this is true or false. It will be true the first time it's saved. So in the case of this example, it ran the save function twice, which is why you have has been created, will be created twice. We can check that to only be the first one by checking if created is equal to true. And there's some more arguments here. We're not going to worry about this because we don't really need to worry about these, but these three here are the main ones we need. The sender, which is the model class, the instance, the actual model object being saved, and the created, true or false if it's the first time it's being saved in the database. So we could run it just like how we have it, but one easier way to kind of write this, and what you'll commonly see, is instead of the arguments being just star args and star quarks, we can go ahead and pull those arguments out and put them to the left of the args and quarks. So we'll go ahead and first put sender, comma, instance, comma, created. And so now what we can go ahead and do is we can do if created, run this function, but only if it's the first time being saved. Don't run it again if the object is saved again in the database. And so now with that, we can go ahead, make sure the server is running, come back here, we'll delete this user, I'll pass in password in here, give it a name, and now if we go back to our console, you'll see has been created has only been called once. And that's because we're checking if created is equal to true or just if created. So if it exists, it's not false. It should return true there. You'll notice in our pre-save, we don't have that. And the created doesn't exist in the pre-save because it hasn't been created yet. So this created flag wouldn't make sense in the pre-save signal. And there's also one other major thing to worry about with the pre-save signal, and that comes with this instance. Since it hasn't been saved yet, this instance.id probably won't exist yet. You should have these other fields, these like first name user, but the automatic ID field adds, the PK, probably won't be there yet on this pre-save signal. So if it's not there, it's not necessarily something you might want to check for in your code because it might not exist till after it's been saved. So that's just kind of a heads up, something you might want to keep in consideration if you do use this pre-save signal. Now, before we talk about the delete signals, we're going to go ahead and create a more real-world example using these two signals. And for this example, I'm really only going to use the post-save. The pre-save will be kept kind of as is for now. You could do something there if you wanted to, but it's going to work the same as we do in our post-save. And this is a pretty common example you'll use anyway, and so it's good to know. And that is creating this profile object whenever we save a user. So we create a user, we want to go ahead and create a profile for that user automatically. And we can do that pretty easily. So we already have our receiver set up and our sender set to be the user object, so we're already ready to go. This is already running after it's been saved. So after we save the user, we can go ahead and create a profile model object. And that is very easy to do. We can do profile dot objects dot create and pass in our objects to create our arguments to create the object here. So we'll do first underscore name, and this will equal the instance, which is what we just saved, dot first underscore name. And we can do that because on our user object itself, we have this first name field here. So this is already a field on our user object. So we can already go ahead and just access that automatically by doing this user instance. We'll just put instance dot first name to get that user instance first name. Next, we go ahead and set the user, and this will just set to the instance because that is the user object that we just saved. And that should be it. We can go ahead and save this, and we can test it out. Now, I don't remember if I said this already or not, but I already created an admin user, so I already have this set up. You'll need an admin user to get into the admin panel, so make sure you do that before you continue. So let's go ahead now and create a username of test3. We'll pass the password in there, or put email in there. We'll create a password. And we'll add the first name. Now we come over here, refresh the page. It's going to log us out because we're not logged in as admin. I'm going to go ahead now and log in with my admin user. Jump into profiles, and now you'll see we have this profile object created. The first thing set the test, and the user is set to the test3 user we just created. So this is already working great. Just like that, we go ahead and automatically create a profile whenever we create a user object. And that's all that is really to it. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing to do, and it's pretty easy to do, which is a couple lines of code just like that within our model object, our model file. And just takes a few lines of code within our models.py, and we can automatically set that up to create it when we create a user. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead just to kind of clear, we'll leave it as it is, that's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and delete user we just created, so it's test3. I'm going to go ahead here and just delete this user. And I probably should create, okay, delete the profile as well, so that should be working good. Okay, and so now I'm going to go ahead and log out of my admin and come back here, refresh. I'm going to go ahead and log out, and we're back here. Okay, The next one we're going to talk about is the pre and post delete. And you can probably figure out what that's going to do. It's just going to go ahead and run it right before we delete the user and right after we delete the user. And so once again, we import those signals up here at the top, pre-delete and post-delete, like that. And once again, the documentation will be available, not there. The documentation will be right here. Okay, so this documentation will be available in the description as well. And so you can get to it and read about it there. The arguments here are even more simple than the ones before. We have the sender, the instance, and the using. And once again, we only care about the sender and the instance in most cases. So that's all you'll need there. It's even simpler than the save signals. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and copy all of the, we'll copy one of these. Go ahead and copy this. And once again, you could run this line as well, this pre-delete or post-delete.connect to run the signals, but we can also use this decorator instead, which is what I'm going to do here. And so here we'll go ahead and change this to pre-delete. And once again, there's no created on the delete, so we'll delete that. And we'll go ahead and delete this. And we'll just go ahead and do a print once again. This will be user will be deleted. Like that. And then we'll go ahead and copy this down, and we'll go ahead and create our post delete. I'm gonna do this in one line because this should be pretty straightforward. It's just the same as the last one. Oh, also this needs to be changed. That needs to be changed to pre as well. But yeah, this will be pretty similar to last time. So I'm gonna run through this example real quick. And so it'll be user has been deleted. So this will run first, right before we delete the user, and this will run right after we delete the user. Let's go ahead and save that. And then, of course, once again, we set the sender to the user model so that whenever we create a user object, it runs these signals. Okay, now we'll go back here, refresh. We'll create our user. And now we'll see that we ran our signals for the create. If I hit delete, come back here. User will be deleted and user has been deleted, both ran. So that is working. As soon as we hit the delete button and we delete the users, that runs as well. Okay, perfect. Now let's go ahead and go through our final example. And this will be pretty easy and pretty similar to the last example. Instead of creating a profile though, whenever we delete the user, we want to create this audit object. And so it's just a way to track when has the user been deleted and at what time and date they were deleted. So once again, what we'll do here is just create one of these objects whenever we run this post. Oh, actually, I forgot to change this. It doesn't really matter, but I'll put this to post pre-deleted and post-deleted. So whenever we run this post-deleted handler function, we want to go ahead and create an audit object. And so just like our last example, we can do audit.objects.create. And inside of here, we set the date to be auto now add true. So this will be added automatically. This will automatically be set to the current date time when this is ran. So we don't need to set this. All we need to do is take the username and put it inside of this username field. And so once again, on our signal, we have access to this instance argument, which is what we just saved, or in this case, what we just deleted, the actual object itself. And so inside of this audit objects.create, I can go ahead and pass in username that equal to instance. And since this is the user object that I just deleted, I can go ahead and put instance dot username to get that username off that object. And that will be, in this case, it'll be test3 or whatever username we pass in. And once again, these lines here, we can go ahead and run that instead of this decorator, but I personally like the decorator better. Okay, let's go ahead now and run this. So I come back to my code here, refresh the page, create my user real quick. And now when I go to delete the object, and I come back into my admin, actually, yeah, we'll go ahead now here, and we'll go ahead and log in, and we'll log in with my admin user. And I jump in and look at my audits. You see we have an audit object created, and the username set to test3. And so that is working great. And you also notice that our user is deleted. We don't have any profiles, and we only have our admin user here. So it successfully deleted it, and it created this audit object to tell us that the username test3 was deleted. Okay, perfect. And that is really it for this video. I just want to go over some really basic signals to kind of give you an idea. There's more here, like you could check when a mini field was changed, and that is another interesting one you could use. But these ones right here, especially this post save, is probably the most common. At least it's the one I use the most. And so that is probably the most useful one you'll use. But hopefully that helped clear up what Django signals are and gives you a basic idea how to use them. It's pretty simple. You just need to go ahead and create a receiver, pass in the center to be the object you want to check, and then pass some sort of function to actually set the logic that you want to run every time a user is saved or deleted. Okay, and so this code before and after will be available in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.